Welcome to the Not in the Job Description podcast. I'm Scott McLaughlin.
And I'm Chris Kiernan.
No matter what type of job you've had, there were situations that happened to you during work that you couldn't wait to tell your friends about.
We interview a variety of guests about some of their crazy stories from work, from entry-level food service industry jobs to doctors and attorneys. We will explore funny, gross, embarrassing, scary, and sometimes almost unbelievable stories that people have experienced while on the job.
Keep in mind that our guests or the companies they work for may be masked in order to protect the innocent, or maybe even the guilty. On today's episode, we're talking to Aaron, who worked at a video rental store. Welcome, Aaron.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Sure, thanks for coming. Chris, I imagine you spent a lot of time in a video rental store.
Oh, yeah, that was like the height of entertainment, right? In our time, on a Friday night, go to Blockbuster or someplace and run a video.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember going to those places, and to me, first of all, we were kind of poor, and my parents were kind of old, so the idea of owning a VCR didn't even hit me until late in the game. But when I did, if I got paid for the hours I spent at Blockbuster, I would be set.
Yeah, I mean, just some of the fun was just going and walking around and trying to figure out, what am I going to watch this time? Or you know what you want, and it's out, of course, and then you're pissed. But
right. Now, Aaron, did you work for one of the small mom and pop places, or did you work for one of the larger chains?
It was one of the larger chains. It wasn't Blockbuster. It was Hollywood Video, which I largely preferred over Blockbuster for some reason or another. I just like the aesthetic of the store, so that kind of drew me towards that. But in Springfield, Ohio, where I grew up, they were flanking one another. So there was Blockbuster on one side of the road and Hollywood on the other. So if one store didn't have it, you'd just eventually drive over to the other one to see.
Did you guys have fights like on Anchorman?
No. No, we didn't really associate with one another.
And I'll also say, normally we don't talk about the company's names or anything like that. But as it turns out, pretty much everybody in this line of business is defunct now. They're gone. Your Blockbusters, your Family Videos. I don't think there's one Blockbuster that exists, but I don't think any other places really exist unless it's a true mom and pop place. Are you guys aware of any?
I think there are some Family Videos hanging on in some locations. They're always kind of attached to a Little Caesars for whatever reason. There must be some sort of joint partnership there. But yeah, by and large, Bend, Oregon is the only place that has the Blockbuster at this point, and Hollywood is completely gone.
Yeah, in preparation for this, I can tell you I was just looking about Blockbuster because I remember, even my kids when they were little, we would take them to Blockbuster. They didn't have it for too long before they started getting in bad financial shape. But when I was in college, Blockbuster was the Wall Street darling. These guys had $1 billion in cash, and they were reviewed as unstoppable. And I just can't believe at one time they had over 9,000 stores in the United States.
The documentary that we just watched, they said that they were opening a new Blockbuster store every 17 hours at one point.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
I read that they were opening one every day at least, and they had 84,000 employees, which is insane to me. But I did think it was interesting to share some pivotal moments in Blockbuster's history because I thought this was funny.
And you're missing that they had the opportunity to buy Netflix.
That's where I was going. The first one was, there was a guy named Reed Hastings who was a Blockbuster customer, and he was pretty pissed about owing $40 for his copy of Apollo 13.
Yes.
That was late. So he went on to create a little company called Netflix in 1997. And of course, when it was created, it was a mail-order DVD rental service. So Blockbuster did actually pass on the offer to buy Netflix for the low price of $50 million. When you think about it, they had $1 billion sitting in the bank. So $50 million, that they wouldn't have even noticed that. They passed on that and they said, we'll just copy your service. We don't need you. We're Blockbuster. And so they were a little late to that market, and they ended up filing for bankruptcy back in 2011.
I suppose the advantage of the Blockbuster model was that you could at least get things quicker than waiting on the mail. You could still go into the store and rent things through that program and return there. So that was one advantage over Netflix. But Netflix, by and large, had, I think, a much more vast selection of DVDs, things that were out of print or only a few were made, the Criterion Collection, the things that were super expensive that you would never buy. Netflix did provide.
And when you think about it, Blockbuster had to either build stores or put something in and pay lease, and they had to pay employees, and they had to do these things. But Netflix, they just had a giant warehouse, and they paid for mail. And it was, I think, $20 a month was their subscription fee to send things back and forth through mail. And there was no such thing as a late fee. You just watched your movies and sent them back. If the mail afforded you to do that, 7 times in a month, then you could get 21 videos. And if it didn't, well, you were just kind of hostage to the mail.
Right. And I would imagine, too, that some of Blockbuster's hesitancy to embrace that model was that a lot of these stores made a ton of their money on the snacks and sodas that they marked up,
Right.
1,000%. So when you go strictly to a by mail model, you lose that kind of revenue.
Yeah, I mean, you lose the revenue, but you gain in the lack of expense. And since we brought that one up again, there is that still one Blockbuster store you guys were talking about in Oregon, but really they just sell memorabilia and snacks. I mean, they're there to sell T-shirts, and I think they even still sell like the boxes that they used to keep the DVDs and things in. They sell those as well. And ironically, you can see that Blockbuster documentary on Amazon Video. Kind of fitting. So you work for Family Video, and
No, I did, actually.
Oh, I thought it was Hollywood Video.
I worked for both.
oh wow, okay. So you work for
You're-
Family Video
you're
and
industry
Hollywood
veteran.
Video. Yeah.
Actually, I started at Suncoast Video at the mall. That was my first gig.
I didn't realize what a professional we were really
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
to. You've got a lot of industry experience.
I've sold and rented. I've been on both sides of it. Yeah. So Suncoast, was the mall-based thing. We'd sell VHS, DVDs, and some memorabilia as well. But transitioning over to Hollywood, I spent quite a bit of time there. And then at some point, I dipped my toes into the family video water, and that was a no-go. So back to Hollywood.
Well, help us understand, like when I first walked into a Blockbuster Video, it was 100% VHS tapes. Were you in that business when it was VHS or DVD, or were you there for the switch? Tell us about when you joined into this business.
I was there for the hybrid. Yes, much like you, Scott. I when I was growing up, it was all VHS, and that's all we had. I mean, DVDs were a very niche market when those first came out. The DVD players were super expensive. The DVDs were really expensive. And I remember the biggest thing that people hated about DVDs was the widescreen. They're like, I don't want those black bars above and below my picture. You're cropping off things that I want to see. I'm like, no, you're actually seeing more of it. That was a hard thing to explain. But yeah, so Suncoast and Hollywood both had the hybrid. But at Suncoast, I was there when the first couple DVDs were coming out. Like I remember Clerks was a big one. That was the first one that came out. And was $45 to buy that.
Well, funny you mentioned that. That's one of the questions I had for you. I remember back in the day, in the early days, even when it was VHS, if you had to buy a movie because you lost it, it'd be like $235. I mean, I think there was some kind of a deal that they had with these movie producers to say, look, you're going to take money out of our pockets from going into the theaters. You're at least going to pay for the individual rights every time somebody prints a VHS cassette. I mean, did you have to charge people like $45, $100 when they lost things?
I think by the time I was in the video store and we were the price had gone down significantly. I think when those things were first starting to happen, the price to produce VHS was more expensive, and the studios had an issue with you purchasing a VHS and then renting it out. Like, oh, you can't do that. We sold you this one copy. It is your property, and that you can't charge other people to watch that. And there was some legality with that, and they eventually ruled that you can do that. It's the same kind of thing with libraries. I mean, you're buying a copy and you're letting other people see it for free or for a nominal sum. So yeah, no, I never charged anyone hundreds of dollars for a lost copy. And if that ever did happen, I'm sure that they would say they invariably returned it and it's our fault, and we'd get into a whole thing, and you always had to negate that fire.
Yeah. Yeah. I know it seems weird to me today, but there are kids who probably aren't going to be listening to this podcast just because they're not kind of in our age range or age group, but they have no idea that these Blockbuster places even existed. They couldn't probably understand, why would you go there? I mean, just turn on your TV and choose whatever you want. And my son, who does this podcast for us, he produces it. He's one of the few people I still know that will go to the store and buy a DVD. Like, he buys things to this day. And to me, that is something that is a bygone era. Like, when's the last time, or maybe it's just me, when's the last time you guys bought a DVD?
Yeah, it's been quite a while for me. When the kids were little, you'd buy them because then you could just play them on the constant loop. That was Disney was my babysitter at the time, right? Just throwing that DVD and go to work. But I used to buy a lot of videos, but yeah, it's been years and years. Of course, they're cheap now too.
Right.
You walk into a Walmart and they got bins of them for $4.99 or something. But
yeah, I'll buy them occasionally if it's either out of print or I can't find it at the library or it's not online anywhere like that. If there's one exceptions where I will actually go on eBay and find a DVD, but to your point, they're giving them away.
But you're searching for those, right? That's just because you can't find it somewhere else.
Right. And this is coming from someone that loves nostalgia. Like the things that I remember about Hollywood Video in those times is like core to my childhood. Like, going to the video store, getting pizza, doing TGIF on Friday nights. Like but the me now that is all about digital content, like I have no interest in going to a video store, which is weird because I do love it and cherish those memories. But yeah, I haven't gone into a store to buy or rent anything in years.
Well, you're not alone. When I was just looking at things on the internet, there are so many like posts and places out there that are talking about how they used to work in a video rental store, or they remember from their childhood that was the most important time of their weekend is when the mom and dad would take them to Blockbuster and they could each pick out a movie. It was a cultural phenomenon that was here and gone within like 2 decades.
Well, it gave kids, like, I think maybe one of the first instances where they could choose something, like they could make that decision,
right?
And all these covers, like as a graphic designer that I am now, I realize how much those covers and that artwork meant to me as a kid, especially the horror section. Like that was the taboo section,
right?
These crazy covers that like just showed pretty explicit things by all intents and purposes. Like it was, and I just was drawn to that. So obviously then you'd go to the kids section where we were allowed to rent things and it was a little less interesting, but yeah, there was just something really fun about being able to choose that title and go home and watch it at that moment.
So when I was looking at things, and even from my own past memory, there was a lot of people bitching about late fees. And I remember back when they would bitch about rewind fees. It used to be if you rented a VCR tape and you watched the whole thing, if you didn't rewind it, at least in my memory, there was like a 25-cent charge because they had to put it in a rewinder and do it themselves. Did you get a lot of complaints about late fees, or I don't know if you were there long enough for the rewind fees?
We never did the rewind fees. I think by and large, the people that were working there would be probably too lazy to like look up the account and tack on 25 cents. We had a host of, if you remember, they made actual rewinders like that were designed, and there was like 4 or 5 of them, and we're just constantly throwing them in there, rewinding it and putting it back in the case. So it really was to us just part of that job. Late fees, on the other hand, were a whole nother can of worms there, because it depended on when people were checking out. If it was a Friday night and the lines are backed up and people are, bemoaning their late fees, it's just like, okay, I'm either going to take it off or we'll deal with this the next time you come in. Right. That's not maybe a rush hour.
Talking about rewinding, I hate to throw my mom under the bus here, but when she first got her first DVD player and she rented something, she actually literally called me. It was like, Chris, I got to return this video, but I don't know how to rewind it. I'm like, Mom, it's a DVD player. Just take it out, put it in the case. You're good. Trust me.
Oh, that is hilarious.
But she was worried about that 25 cents.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
And it's not related to that, but I'm just thinking about my dad. I rented Sleepers, the Brad Pitt movie.
Right.
I believe he was in that, right? And Kevin Bacon. Some of those DVDs, when those were first coming out, those movies were so long they couldn't fit them on one side of the DVD, so they were dual sided. And my dad, I was taking the DVD back, and he said, that movie didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, it just kind of started without any kind of
middle of the movie.
No credits. Like they're just, all these people are pissed off for some reason. I'm like, Dad, you watched it on side too.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom was so much older at that time. So the idea of her even putting a VCR tape in was completely out of question. So there was no way she was messing up anything with the DVD.
Right.
That's funny.
Right.
Well, you mentioned the late fees and people getting pissed and whether you want to choose to fight your battle. You had to have some interesting stories of customers. I mean, Chris and I worked in a restaurant together, and we had regulars that would come in where everyone just kind of knew them, and we knew their intricacies and the things they would do or the things they would complain about. You had to have some similar situations with customers at the video store.
Yeah, there were the people that you were happy to see. They were friendly and didn't give you any hassle. And then there were the people that you just kind of like, okay, paper, rock, scissors, who's dealing with this person this time around. Yeah, but there was kind of a host. It was so long ago, I don't recall a ton of specific people. I do remember one guy named Ben. He was unable to drive. I don't know what the story was. He was an older guy, pretty obese, and he would call ahead every Friday night too. He couldn't have done it on Thursday or Saturday or anything like that. It was a Friday night, and would say here, and you knew his voice. You could tell right off the bat that this was the guy. Like, we didn't have caller ID, so there wasn't any screening for this thing. But he would call, and he would have anywhere from 15 to probably 20 titles that he wanted you to look up.
Oh boy.
And see if they were in stock. And I mean, literally, the line's just growing to the back of the building. And I'm like, okay, Ben, what do you need? And yeah, that's in. No, this isn't. And then we'd have to run and grab them and hold them. And he said, okay, I'll be there in X number of minutes or whatever.
Wow.
So you would see the taxi cab pull up.
Oh wow.
He would get a taxi and come in. And I don't mean to throw the guy, but like he smelled so bad. like you could, the doors were probably 20 feet away from us, and like it would just waft right in as soon as and it was just like this strong like urine smell. It was just so bad. And I mean, nice enough, but just like the most, like he kind of embodied and defined the word grizzled. Like I can't think of another term for it, but that was the guy. That was a very interesting interaction nearly every Friday.
Thank God for Netflix, huh?
Right. Yeah.
So did this guy call like at 7:30 on Friday when like there's a line of 20 people?
It was peak. It was never like, I'll call it like 4 or 5 so I can kind of get a jump start on it. It was like the sun had gone down, the lines were out the door.
Now, when Chris and I worked at a steakhouse, we had this customer that would come in, and maybe I'm making this part up because it makes it sound worse, but I swear it was mostly on Friday nights when us young kids just wanted to get the hell out of there so we could go and party and do stupid stuff. And Friday at 8:58, when we closed at 9, there was a guy that would show up, and everyone would just go, oh no, because he would order a T-bone well done, and it was never done right for him, so he had to keep the grill up. Did you guys have people that would, first of all, how late did you stay open? And did you have people that would ruin your weekend by sticking around too long?
Yeah. Well, Scott, that's a much worse situation for you because you actually had to prepare a meal for someone, whereas this was like people would come in at 11:55, 11:58 and start wandering around. Now, it wasn't so much of an issue if they knew exactly what they wanted. It was an issue when they wanted to browse. So we closed at midnight, 7 days a week. It was midnight. And, you had to reconcile and count all the cash registers. And sometimes we were so hopeful that no one else would come in. Like we would close the last register at 11:50 and just pray that no one came in. So, and as soon as someone pulled up, you saw those headlights. You're like, God damn it. Go open that cash register back up and just try to keep track of what you sold. But
oh, wow.
Yeah. And you like 12:05, you kind of like gently nudge them. Hey, is there anything I can help you with? Are you looking for things in particular? In your head, you're like, get the fuck out of here. Like we're ready to go home. We're teenagers too. We're not teenagers, early 20s. Like,
yeah, it's prime time to be getting the hell out of there.
Right. We didn't want to be there.
So, I think that you knew this question was coming because you worked at Hollywood Video. And if my memory serves me right, they rented out a lot of porn.
Hollywood did not.
Oh, who was it?
Family.
Of course.
Which was what I said earlier, that I was only there for a short stint, and that was a big part of it.
Yeah, but it makes sense that I would think that Hollywood would be about porn, but not family.
Yeah, that was always the weird thing that people were like, why would Family Video have an adult section where Hollywood and Blockbuster would not? I couldn't make rhyme or reason to it, but yeah, there were some interesting people that, and when I worked at Family Video, the internet was not new. Pornography was by and large free everywhere. I don't know if these folks didn't have it, and it's not something that you're doing anonymously too. This is a face-to-face interaction with somebody. I would have people that come in and ask for specific titles.
Oh my gosh!
Like they had some sort of radar as to, so they must have had internet because they knew that this thing was dropping this day, and that Family Video would invariably have it. And I'm like, I don't know. These people were really like interested in the plot. Like,
yeah, right. They're big storyline people.
Yeah.
And they can't quite get that on the internet with those snippets.
No.
Not that I know from experience, but dial-up was kind of a bitch back then.
Yeah, that's true too.
Right.
Streaming wasn't what it is today. Again, not that I know from experience, but.
Well, and this was Springfield, Ohio too. So we might have been a little bit behind the curve in terms of internet. So there's a very good chance that dial-up would have not have been a viable option for these folks.
Well, and I was kind of I wouldn't say I was an outgoing kid, but I certainly wasn't totally shy. I mean, I could have a conversation with somebody, but I got to tell you, as a 20-year-old, I don't know how well I would do with somebody walking up to me and, I just think of the movie Clerks when he's going through the list of movies that are porn titles that are just ridiculous. I couldn't know if I could keep a straight face if somebody asked me for Rumple Foreskin and whether it was in yet.
The one I remember, because I thought, my mind said there's no way that this could be real. The guy asked for Hustle and Blow. And I'm like, I literally took him to Hustle and Flow. And he's like, no, man. I want Hustle and Blow. And I have no idea what you're talking. Is that a real thing? He said, yeah. So sure enough, we had it, but
You telling me you didn't have all those movies memorized?
I didn't. I avoided that back room like the plague. It was right next to the bathroom. And
that's
on
a
occasion,
bad design too.
It was. And you didn't, some of these video stores, you needed to actually ask for the key to go to the bathroom. I don't know if that was the case with Family. You would find covers from the, just laying on the floor in there. It's like, so you can put two and two together.
Yeah, that's pretty gross.
Yeah.
Now, I remember in the Family Video that was in the neighborhood near my neighborhood, we went there one time for the sole purpose of trying to find the funniest title for a movie. And I was always surprised that I guess it was Family Video, what separated the regular area from the porn area was like some saloon doors. Like you could see right around it. All these, young kids are just hanging around the door. It was very awkward, but
right.
And that's where I learned that there was a movie that existed called Slammin' Granny and the Fanny. And we did not rent it, just, in case anybody's asking, but I think it won. Yeah, we just stole it. We were too embarrassed to rent it.
That's hilarious. I don't think Family had the saloon doors or the beads or anything like that. I really think it was just like a corridor. So they kind of angled it so you had to walk.
Oh, okay.
So it was a game of
At least it wasn't visible.
No, but you would know it. And there was always like that embarrassed husband or something walking back there. You just knew that he was like, he would look, because, the new release wall was right by that hallway. So he'd be kind of like just staring at, I want to see what Forrest Gump is. And then he would just mosey around the corner.
Way around the corner, yeah.
Where's Forrest Hump instead? So, yeah.
Forrest Hump. Chris, you rented that before.
A couple times.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because you like the story.
Oh, yeah. It's got a great plot point.
Totally.
So did anybody ever return movies late that were porn?
Yes.
And then complain about it? Because I'll tell you what, I never rented any porn from any place like that. But if I was late with it, I would not want to cause any kind of scene because I just want to get out of there.
Yes. No, so I wasn't, like I said, my moment at Family was so brief. What I did find at Hollywood is that people would put the porn title accidentally in the regular standard DVD and return it. And then you had to make that awkward phone call to them that you actually returned this title and it's not correct. And, you were kind of hoping that you were talking to the husband or I don't want to assume that women didn't rent pornography, but by and large, it was mostly men. So you didn't want to like rat the guy out in front of his family. So
right.
Is Paul there? You return this. Oh, okay. I'll be right there.
Yeah. His copy of Edward Penis Hands is late. Yeah. So I guess one of the things that I saw a lot on the internet from people that used to work at video stores, and I don't know if you ever had to do this, but a lot of people said that when they had downtime, which was probably, during the days or something, they had to actually make outbound phone calls to people for late fees. Did you ever have to do that?
Well, Scott, that just threw me into a flashback. Yes. I had forgotten about that. You printed out a daily report every morning.
Oh,
and
wow.
On a good day, it was 20 people. On a bad day, it was 40 or 50. And they wanted you to do this and open the store and stock all these shelves. And, you're absolutely right. I had totally forgotten about that. So, yeah, you were tasked with calling these people sometimes for the, third time. And you do it every day. It wasn't like the report excluded someone that you called yesterday.
Right.
It would come out that day and you'd take a highlighter and you'd say, I went through all these people, left a message, denoted on their account. Yeah.
And this was for late fees or actual movies that they hadn't returned yet, or both?
I don't think we ever tried to do that with late fees. It was mostly outstanding movies.
Gotcha.
And then there was a point in which you would politely say, if you don't return this shortly, it's going to collections, and you will be charged, and that would open up a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, depending on who you're talking to, that's going to be a very interesting conversation, and just because you have such a variety of people going into that type of store. But did you have any other characters that you remember as far as customers that would come in and you had to take care of?
Yeah, there were a couple others that kind of come to mind. The one lady that was very interesting, she was very small but nice, but always was in black and very interesting. And she would always come in and ask you for titles and like start this conversation. And that was the other thing too. There were customers that were nice enough, but wanted to talk your ear off. And it's like, I don't have the time for this, or I'm sorry, I'm not interested in engaging in this conversation. But she would come in and talk about her being a Wiccan a lot. And
will you explain what a Wiccan is?
It's like
to your knowledge.
From my understanding, it's like a modern day witch, and it's not necessarily like the Halloween persona of it, but people that celebrate or do
witchcraft.
Some rituals, witchcraft. Yeah, and I don't think it's always malicious. It's just, and I think they consider it part of a religion for all intents and purposes. But she would talk about that, and me being, I consider myself a pretty nice guy. I would engage and talk to her as much as I could. For whatever reason, she remembered that, and she came in one day, apparently having won the lottery in some capacity. I don't think it was like $1 million jackpot, but maybe like 100,000 or something like that, with a stack of cash.
Nice.
And gave me like $1,000, and I'm like, this feels weird. I can't accept that. And she's like, I won't take no for an answer. So again, me trying to be like the nice guy, like realizing that we're all not making any money. Like I put envelopes for all the people that I worked with, and here's $200.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
she was more like Sabrina the Good Witch.
She was. Yeah. When she had told us too that she was paying off like a lot of people's debts that she knew, and so she really was paying that forward. So very sweet.
Well, that's a witch I could get behind. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yes. Yeah.
Did she have very specific taste in the movies that she rented? I mean, I can't imagine she's renting Home Alone, right?
I'll be honest with you, I don't remember her ever renting anything.
Oh, she just came in.
I think she just kind of came in and just like wandered around and was like, I'm not seeing anything. Like, well, okay, well. So,
wow. Well, I mean, that's great that she was nice enough to share her windfall of cash.
Yeah.
I was going to say, did you ever have any problems? Because I remember going to Blockbuster, and they had all of the videos up there, but there wasn't a damn DVD in any of those cases or anything. Did you guys have a lot of problems with shoplifters or thieves?
So the pornography at Family Video, that was not in the boxes. There was these orange chips. So that was always the thing, is you could see these people walking up, like trying to hide these orange chips in between two other DVDs to kind of like, and oh, okay. I do recall, not to allude back to another thing, I do remember these folks. It seemed normal enough. I saw like Disney's Cars in their hand, and I picked it up, and behind it was an orange chip, and they had their kid with them. And they're like, they weren't bashful about this, but the title they were renting was Couple Seducing Teens.
Oh.
And Cars for their kid. And I'm like, okay, so you two are going to be in the other room watching this, and your daughter is going to be in the other room watching Cars. So that was shocking. But
and again, the internet existed.
It did. It very much so.
Wow. Interesting.
I don't know. I just thought the juxtaposition of those titles was very, it wasn't like, hey, the kids are gone to college, like we can finally let our hair down here. It's like, no, your kid's with you and you're doing this. But no, to answer your question. So yeah, Hollywood, we had these purple clips in the side of the DVDs that, we only had this mechanism up at the counter that could release that clip. I'm sure anyone with a 3D printer nowadays could have done that in a second, but somebody I recall took one of the PlayStation games back into the back. You'd always kind of be aware that someone was just kind of like lurking in the back and you hadn't seen them.
Right.
We had cameras throughout there, but rarely did we ever check them. And I just remember this guy was back there for quite some time, and then he just kind of like hustled out of there, and he was like holding his hand. And I went back there and found the PlayStation game. I don't believe he ever got it open, but there was blood all over. He had brought in some sort of knife and tried to pry it open, and invariably like slashed his hand open. And
so did you call CSI to find out, get some DNA on that guy?
Yeah. No, that was the thing. It's like, you're not paying me enough to hazmat this. Right. Just not interested in this.
Was there ever a time, because, they only had limited supply of some of these movies, there'd be a new release, and maybe they had 40 of them, but was there ever a case or a time where two people wanted that last copy and it maybe almost
Yes.
came to blows, or they're up there complaining, I had it first. No, I had it first.
Yeah. So some people would stand by the return box. So some of the video stores, the first Hollywood, I worked at multiple Hollywood videos. The first Hollywood video had a return box outside. So there were people, I mean, it could be 20 degrees below zero, and they'd be like, go out there and check and see if you got this. Like, dude, I was just out there. Yeah, but I just saw a car. But then there was the drop box that was inside the building, and there would be people that literally on Friday nights would just stand by the, is that it? Is that it? Is that it?
Oh, wow.
No, it's not it.
Yeah.
And Hollywood implemented this thing where we said guaranteed in stock. That was the title.
Oh, wow.
Very misleading because we didn't guarantee it was in
Sure.
stock. We just guaranteed that you would get it for free if we didn't have it in. So people were like, what the hell, man? You said it was guaranteed in stock. It's like, well, here's a voucher. You can get it free next time. And that would sort of soften the blow a little bit.
But they still weren't watching Titanic in their living room that night.
No, they were.
Yeah.
They weren't. They had to settle for something else.
So, when I think about the different places I've worked, and I've worked in a lot of different places, I think about like how the whole thing runs. Right now, it's pretty straightforward. You're in the business of renting video games and movies and DVDs, and probably selling candy and popcorn and stuff
Yes.
like that. But as far as like how that's run from a management perspective, like, did you guys, I mean, when would you even have, or did you ever have like management meetings? You have to come in early. Did they ever have contests? Did they ever do anything that you had to do something to compete? Because it seems like that business is almost like or was almost on like autopilot.
Right. Yeah. So most of the people that worked in the store had the same mentality. This was a job. No one was thinking that this was a career. So no one really gave, more than they had to. Some of the district managers were a little different. This was their career, and their jobs depended on how well the stores operated. So there was always this MVP program they would push us to push to the customers. You'd get 2 DVDs at a time, and then a popcorn and a soda or something like that. So it was essentially just trying for $9.99 a month. It was like
Okay.
it was like a subscription service early on. And if you were, really diligent about watching and returning, it actually was very much worth it. You couldn't get the newest releases. We'd have to go out around the store every couple weeks, and okay, now we can put an MVP sticker on that. So it denoted that this new
okay.
release was available for you to get the free, quote unquote, free. Some of the other things that were just in terms of processes that were not my favorite was, so inventory. We did that once a quarter, maybe. So we would literally take these, we had a couple wireless, but most of them were wired. So you'd have to plug them into the computer and walk through the entire store and scan every single
wow.
title and reconcile them. And if you didn't, was there the defective bin, you had to go in there and look and make sure that those titles were in there, and so on and so forth. And that was like hey, we're here till 6 a.m. Like, pack a lunch, like, you're here. That wasn't fun. The other thing that I have flashbacks about was the shrink wrap. So we would, you'd buy, so this title came out, you buy 100 copies of it. It rented well for a couple weeks, and then it was just sitting on the shelf and you had to clear out space. So we would sell them as previously viewed movies.
Right.
For whatever reason, they thought, wow, it would be really nice if we shrink wrapped each one of these things. So it really gave the visage that it's a new title, right?
yeah.
Right. But the machine that we had to use the shrink wrap, you'd press this hot edge down and it would just emit this toxic smelling gas or smoke right up. I'll never forget the smell of that thing. Like clearly the cellophane was not good.
You'll probably not live to see 50 now.
No, it's in my lungs for sure.
Well, you talk about some of the customers that are wild there, and something that I'm always interested in, because I'm in a business that's known for having relatively high turnover. Coworkers. I mean, you guys had to have people in and out of there all the time. I mean, even you said in a short period of time you worked at multiple video rental places. What were some of the coworkers like?
They were really nice. I think at some of the places it was more of a family, and for lack of a better term, like there were actually good friendships there. The people, I was always kind of an outsider. I walked in these places and there was already like a tight knit of people that probably were friends before they worked at Family or Hollywood Video, and then kind of came in together. But I remember at the time there was this guy, David. He was a really nice guy, but man, he was obsessed with Fast and the Furious, and he had his Honda Civic, and he tried to pimp it out, and it was just, it was just so cheesy. I'm like, man, I don't think you're giving off the impression that you think you are, but and then
saying it wasn't a chick magnet?
I mean, it was a Honda Civic. I don't know. I mean, he had the spoiler or whatever,
Right.
the body kit on it. I guess it was better than my Ford Escort. So
I'll bet you that movie did so much for Honda Civic sales.
Oh, yeah.
On all the aftermarket stuff that you can put on there. Yeah.
Yeah. By and large, they were really great people. And no one I stay in touch with currently, but we had some good times.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think when you're younger and you're with, working with a bunch of people, it's some of the most fun times you can have, because sometimes you never talk to these people again, but you get to know about a variety of people. Chris and I worked together when we were 16, and we're still in touch with a few of the people, but man, there were some characters, and I can only imagine, especially in the high turnover areas, you have some crazy characters.
For sure. Well, and back in the day, it was you versus the customer. There was that kind of camaraderie that existed. Like, no one wanted to be here. We're teenagers or early 20s. Like, we wanted to be doing other things, and this was not it. But it was building character.
Yeah, absolutely. Since you were mentioning Family Video, I don't know if you guys knew this, but I think I may have alluded to it earlier. Family Video was the last major video rental chain to close its doors, and it lasted until January of 2021. I think I might have confused it with Hollywood, but it lasted until January of 2021. They closed their last 200 stores after surviving a decade longer than Blockbuster, Movie Gallery, and Hollywood Video. I think that's crazy that I would have never guessed that there was even a place still renting videos in 2021, but I guess the reality is there were only 200 stores. There probably wasn't one near me.
There was one not the end of my street, but a couple blocks away from where I live now for the longest time. And I never saw anyone in the parking lot, so I was always kind of curious how it could possibly still be going. And it eventually turned into like a tire shop.
Yeah, I think a lot of those are strip malls now.
But I love that you still have the facade of Family Video. Like, you don't tear the building down, you just repurpose it. Like when you see banks that look like Taco Bells.
Right. And I think Aaron's the only one that got a Wiccan bonus out of all
That's
of it. That's
true, yeah.
Wiccan
bonus. The Wiccan bonus was not that popular back in the day.
Yeah, no, that was a one-off there. That didn't happen very often.
Well, thanks again, Aaron, for meeting with us. And as we wrap this up, Chris, what have we learned?
Yep, I learned don't be shy, carry that orange porn chip with pride.
That's right. I think you're right on that. I learned just get my porn off the internet. It's just too embarrassing for me. I'm too shy. Well, again, thank you very much for joining us. This is Scott McLaughlin.
This is Chris Kiernan.
Saying,
we'll see you at work. Thank you for listening to the Not in the Job Description podcast. If you have a story you'd like to share, or if you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, please let us know by sending us an email with a brief description of your story to stories@notinthejob.com.